Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about one of the Browns' young wide receivers.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, considering the wide receiver situation, regardless of how Jarvis Landry turns out, Dave, you and the guests a lot of times refer to Donovan Peoples-Jones as a developmental player. He's in, his third or fourth year now, entering his third or fourth season. How long is it going to take? I feel like somebody like him should already be well enough along that we could just kind of plug him in. Then we're not so needy at wide receiver. But, the past few years we watched him. I don't have anything bad to say about him. He seems decent. What are your thoughts on him as far as his development?
Appreciate the call, the voicemail as well. And Jeff, when we refer to him on the show as a developmental guy, it's important to remember they drafted him in the 6th round. So he was a surprise to make the team somewhat as a rookie. Had a great training camp a season ago. Then when Odell left, they tried to kind of force him into that number 1 role, the main wide receiver. I don't think that's necessarily fair to his development. Your thoughts on that?
I would agree with that. At some point, once the guy's on a team, I think we have to kind of forget where he was drafted. You're on the team, okay, now produce. And I like Donovan Peoples-Jones a lot. I think he can be a really good wide receiver. And I'm going to go back to the quarterback situation. I looked it up. I don't have the exact numbers. When Odell was considered the number 1 target on this team, the completion percentage to him was low on the passes to Odell, and the completion percentage to Donovan Peoples-Jones while Odell was on the team was really pretty high. It was over 70%. And then Odell left. Donovan Peoples-Jones became kind of the number 1 target, and that completion percentage to Donovan Peoples-Jones dropped to about what it was with Odell. In fact, I think it might have been a little lower. And I wonder why. I don't think Donovan Peoples-Jones was doing anything different. Maybe defenses were, defending him differently because he was probably the number 1 target, or maybe your quarterback has a problem throwing to number 1 targets. I don't know what it is. All I know is that the numbers showed that the number 1 guy completion percentage was way down, and when he was not the number 1 guy, it was way up. So I think he can be a pretty good wide receiver, but I'm not going to put any kind of cap on him because I think he's big, he's strong. He was one of the most highly recruited wide receivers in the country coming out of high school, and he went to Michigan. He was considered, the 5-star recruit, blah blah blah, all that stuff. Well, you don't lose ability, I don't think, but you have to develop that ability. Maybe that didn't happen at Michigan. I think he's looked good with the Browns. And I think if he's put in a role, Dave, where he can be a key target and maybe, like the man or one of the men, if he's the number 1 wide receiver going into the season, I think there's a problem. But I think he can be very good. I really do.
Yeah, I agree. I think he can be a pretty good red zone target as well because, as you mentioned, his size. This is also kind of interesting. This is from Browns.com. So Donovan Peoples-Jones averaged 17.6 yards per reception. That's 3rd in the NFL behind Deebo Samuel and Jamar Chase. Now, both of those guys, Chase and Samuel, had more receptions, but 17.6 yards per catch on a team that struggled to throw the ball downfield kind of goes what we were talking about. This is a guy that has some skills and can play.
Mm-hmm. And he can do that for you. And again, it goes back to scheme and it goes back to the quarterback. Can the quarterback get him the ball where he can do something with it? And, at times we've seen Baker Mayfield do that and look good, and at times we haven't. So, as you said earlier on, Dave, in the first segment, he's a 5th-year pro at quarterback. You expect him to suddenly become, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen? I hope so, but boy, that would be stunning, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And so he's got to play his best football all the time for our team to get to where it needs to be. And even before his injury this season, we didn't see that.